Let this go for just a second as we let the channel open up, get some folks in the room. And here we go. Broncos country, what is up? A very special edition of MHI Gut Reaction as we react to the Broncos 42-17 loss against the Detroit Lions on the road. Tom, man, there's a lot to get to in this one, but how are we feeling?
Oh, it's tough to watch a team just get outplayed so badly. It's just the defense looked like they had ankle weights on. They just looked slow, and I was worried about that to begin with on the turf, getting exploited with a slower defense like that. And it happened, man. It's pretty rough when you got to watch that.
It's disappointing. It's rough, but the season marches on, right? We're not completely dead. We need to react to tonight. We need to fix a lot of problems in a short amount of time, and we're going to help you do that. We're going to help and try to figure out and diagnose how the Broncos do that.
Right.
Before we do, let's say what's up to some folks. Let's introduce ourselves to some folks who may not be used to seeing us. He is Thomas Hall. I am Luke Patterson. This is MHI. We're doing the gut reaction for Mile High Huddle. Happy to tag in from Chad and Zach. Scott is with us as well. If you would like to reach out to Tom, please do so on X at Thomas Hall NFL. Yours truly at Luke Patterson LP. Reach out to Scott as well at Scout Kennedy. Follow the mothership at Mile High Huddle. Tom, 42-17. The score was just as bad as the performance. We're talking missed tackles. We're talking Sean Payton screaming and yelling at Russell Wilson on the sideline, dumb penalties, injuries. I mean, it almost feels like everything that could have gone wrong went wrong in this game. How do the Broncos react? What's the plane ride like from Detroit? I mean, what's the post-game presser going to be like? Because a couple things that I immediately think of if I was in Detroit getting ready to ask a question, I want to know about that exchange with Sean Payton and Russell Wilson. You tweeted it out. I retweeted it. It's all over X right now and social media. It's trending. Sean Payton absolutely dog cussed Russell Wilson on the sideline as the Broncos failed to capitalize on a touchdown. Not once, not twice, but 3 times, Tom. What'd you make of the heated exchange between head coach and quarterback?
Well, I mean, I said it on on X or Twitter or whatever that he should have been yelling at himself. I mean, he did not have his team ready, first of all, and second of all, he should have thrown the challenge flag. There was, at least you're down so many points, you've got to get something. You got to you don't know if you're going to walk in on the next play or not. You got to throw the challenge flag, and he didn't do it. I think he was probably heated that Russ ran the play too soon or whatever, but you still got to make that call as a head coach. He didn't make it 2 times. He should have done it twice, and he didn't do it. That's the problem. And so, I mean, he can yell at Russell Wilson all he wants, but he should be looking himself in the mirror.
Frustration has gotten the better of us at one time or another as human beings, right? Whether that be in the workplace, whether that be in an organized activity, hobby, sport, maybe you're a musician. I don't know. We've all had outbursts, okay? Sean Payton has not been immune from those outbursts. We've seen it all season, but that level of screaming and yelling at Russ seemed a little bit extreme, dare I say, and I think we're going to continue to react to that. Lawrence Rivera, our guy, weighing in here on the gut reaction post game with MHI, saying, "What's up, guys? Holy bleep! Why is Sean Payton yelling at Russell Wilson? Is it because Russ didn't throw the red flag?"
Yeah,
that's exactly it. And Lawrence, I've seen this all over X and social media. Thank you so much for joining the gut reaction show. A lot of times it's pull the finger and point the thumb, right? I mean, Sean Payton's fingerprints were all over this loss as well.
Yeah, and it was an embarrassment. There's no doubt about it. They got outclassed. They were on the road on turf, which I was worried about to begin with, the slow defense, like I said, but they just got embarrassed, right? And it's happened before, and they can either bounce back and still make a run at the playoffs, because if you were going to lose one, this is the one to lose. There's no doubt about it. Losing the NFC, but it does call into question of whether or not they have the mental makeup to finish it out, go 3-0. And win out so that they can actually get into the playoffs, because they might need a little help at this point. We'll see. I think if they win out, they don't, but One thing that I do know for sure is the team just doesn't have the talent to be a contender. They could get in the playoffs, but I don't think they're going to go very far. That's the problem.
It felt so many times in this game that the Broncos were just outclassed when they were playing this team, and it was something I was really worried about. We talked about it on MHI on Wednesday night, Tom. I mean, the Lions bullied the Broncos in this game. I think you can argue that the team quit in several different areas. Sure, they put up some late points. Shout out Lil Jordan Humphrey, I guess. You know, and it's just frustrating for this fan base. We've talked about it so much. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. That's the curious case of the 2023 Denver Broncos. You do not know which team is going to show up. We talk about this game being the game to lose if the Broncos were going to lose one game, at least one game, the rest of the go. That's because it's conference, right? NFC, different conference. Man, this could have been such a rallying cry for this team to beat a solid football team like the Detroit Lions. And I got to give Detroit their flowers. It was cool to see their fan base show up and show out. It's something that they probably haven't experienced a lot of their lifetimes. But this one stings, Tom. And Huero Vidal wanted to weigh in. Thank you so much for your support joining MHI in the gut reaction. If it was a loss, that's one thing. But when you lose like that, straight garbage.
Yeah. Well, they got manhandled. The defensive line just got manhandled. It was pretty ugly. It looked like the Detroit offensive linemen were just pushing shopping carts around a grocery store. I mean, they were moving them at will, and that was pretty bad. And then, at the very end of the game, when Amon-Ra St. Brown stiff arm Josie Jewell to the ground, that tells me just about everything I needed to know about how much effort they were actually putting in to this game, because the defense just didn't show up, and that was indicative of it. It was kind of embarrassing to see a 235-pound linebacker get manhandled by a wide receiver that badly. So there was a lot of problems.
Try a rookie tight end. Look at Laporta and what he did. A 2-touchdown game. I mean, he ragdolled Josie Jewell. This Detroit Lions offense and offensive coordinator Ben Johnson, who will be a head coach in this league, because it seems like offensive coordinators get these chances, these new young and up-and-comers, and when they try to impress, whether that be in a playoff run or in the playoffs, teams want to bite. And the immediate thing that I first thought of when I saw Ben Johnson and his offensive calling and the success that he had against Vance Joseph's defense tonight was the Los Angeles Chargers. Did we get a preview of what the Los Angeles Chargers, their offense could look like? A tad. Now, I was surprised that Detroit came out and really wanted to pass the ball with Jared Goff. They didn't develop that running game till much later, it felt like, Tom. Overall, super disappointing when you look at this. This could have been so huge for the Denver Broncos, who have fallen back to 500 right now as they sit at 7-7, technically still on the outside looking in. There is a path to the playoffs. Man, this one stings. Yeah,
and Chris Hernandez, thanks for coming in with the support. Thank you for the super chat saying, man, that was rough. It was rough, man. It was, they looked like they were coming out hot. The offense came out, threw the ball to Jerry Jeudy, got down there, and then that fumble, and it just went downhill from there. The one thing I will say, and it's embarrassing right now, and I'm frustrated watching this team, but if you think about it, if I step back and I say, okay, what's left, right? Can we step back and actually look at what this team has done? Yeah, they've had some embarrassment. When they're bad, they're really bad, but they've actually played fairly well. It's hard to win them all. They've done some good. I think, we can still hopefully cling to some positivity that they might be able to get into the playoffs. We'll see. It's hard right now. I mean, because they got outclassed, but 3 games left. They can still make a push for the playoffs. They've got 3 teams that aren't very good on their schedule. So, and 2 home games. So there is some positivity that you can look at in the future, but man, that game plan, that defensive game plan, leaving the middle wide open, just that can't happen again. I just just can't.
Well, and edge defenders aren't setting the edge. They're just
Nope.
pass rushing up the field. Chris, thank you so much for the support. Really, really appreciate it. Been with us since day one. I mean, so many we talked about the linebackers, the defensive line. I mean, the secondary missing tackles. This was an absolute collapse. And it felt like at times the Broncos, they just didn't support themselves. But speaking of support, guys, we've got to let you know about our friends over at Little Caesars. Make Little Caesars the official pizza sponsor of the NFL, part of your Sunday game day. Order online during the Pizza pregame 1 hour before and 3 hours after NFL kickoffs, plus all day Sunday. Get ready for some football and get ready for some fun.
Yeah, and choose your favorite Little Caesars pizza or pick the toppings you crave. Either way, you win. And speaking of winning, everyone scores with convenient delivery or in-store pizza portal pickups, so grab some friends and enjoy a few slices during the game. I mean, it's always good to have pizza, whether you win or lose, I guess.
Well, and that's just it, right? Sometimes we got to stress eat. And I know a lot of Broncos countries trying to figure it out, right? Holidays, we'll get healthier in January, that kind of thing. No, that's just it, man. I mean, this is an emotional time right now for Broncos country. We've been riding such a emotional high for the last couple of months. Been kicked in the teeth a couple times the last few weeks, Tom. I mean, getting over on the Chargers is one thing, but to have the pupil and Dan Campbell officially smack his mentor's team in the mouth. I mean, it's tough too when you look at this Broncos team too, Tom, because you try to figure out, are they beating themselves or are their opponents just rolling over them? I think it was a mix of both today, if we're being completely honest. They were outclassed by the Lions. A lot of dumb stuff, self-inflicted wounds from the Denver Broncos.
Well, and as Miguel said, all right, here, coming in with super chat. Thank you so much, Miguel, saying they exposed Denver's major weakness, Denver defensive line and linebacker. And they did. They actually had a pretty good game plan. They came out and kind of surprised the defense. I don't think the defense was ready for Jared Goff to come out and start slinging it. I think they were ready for run play after run play, and they just weren't prepared. They didn't seem prepared for what was to come, and then they didn't make any sort of adjustment after they realized that that's what's coming for them, right? They just seem to just go out there and continue to play what they had just been running the play before. And it was kind of one of those things where you just scratch your head and be like, what was Vance Joseph thinking at this point?
Yeah, and the players. I mean, are we reading our own press clippings? Are we, trying to get to the Pro Bowl? Have we automatically made it just because the Chiefs are having some hissy fit meltdown? I mean, these are all questions that are coming into play. I mean, I don't know. And that's the weird thing about this whole Sean Payton versus Russell Wilson drama that we are seeing, and whether or not they're going to be a long-term solution is something that you and I continue to debate. We will continue that debate on this show. Before we do, let's get to our guy, Casey Nickel. Thank you so much for joining the MHH gut reaction, saying, yeah, tonight may suck, but look at this team from last year all the way to this year. The leaps and bounds it has made. Give Sean Payton another year or two with this talent, skyrocket along with the wins. And Casey, that's a refreshing response that I think we need a little bit, right? It's the gut reaction show. I'm disappointed. I'm frustrated. I'm a little embarrassed. I think we all are right here in Broncos country. There are improvements to look at when it looks at Sean Payton. This team is 500. They're playing meaningful football in December, Tom. When is the last time that we could say that? 2015, 2016? I mean, it's not all bad right now. I know it feels like that after a loss, but Casey, you're exactly right. There are some silver linings, especially with Sean Payton. However, he is not immune from criticism, Tom.
No. Well, and that's the thing. I mean, when it comes down to it, they weren't ready to play. And they really weren't. And that falls on the head coach. I say that every time. I know the players are out there on the field, but if they're not ready to play, they don't have the right game plan. And it, one mistake cost them, and then it was downhill from there. That's something that the head coach needs to fix. He's the one that where the buck stops, right? You can blame Russell Wilson, you can blame the defense, but in the end, Sean Payton did not. This team wasn't ready to play. That's my perspective. That's the only way you can explain getting beat so soundly. Not just talent. They just weren't there. They weren't prepared. That's Sean Payton. But I will say this, and I know I'm probably going to get a bunch of crap for it. It seemed like Russell Wilson was still trying to play hard, so you can give him crap for fumbling it. You can, talk about that he, isn't the same quarterback he used to be, but I'm telling you, he seemed to be out there still competing when it was clear that other people had given up.
Yeah. I mean, if we want to give out, try hard points and orange slices, then yeah,
Sure.
give Russ an orange. I mean, like, this is the NFL, baby. Like, it's time you got to get going, Russ. You got a
Sure.
big contract that's going to kick in. I hear you, Tom. When you see a bunch of quitters, you try to look for the guys that are at least trying to fight. You can't say that Russ isn't trying. Is he playing winning football? Not tonight. Right? Has he been improved? Yeah, he's been improved, just like Casey's saying, and we're seeing some of that improvement under Sean Payton. Our guy Naj, what's up, Naj? We got to meet Naj at the meet and greet. Him and his crew represented Broncos country very well. A huge, generous $49.99 super. Thank you so much, Naj. Hey, brothers, we ran into a buzzsaw tonight. Proud of the team for battling, but defensively at the line of scrimmage, we've had a hard time matching stout offensive lines. It was painful to watch. On to next week. We need to rebound and finish this season strong. Naj, you're exactly right, man. Tom, we are all seeing it right now. The defense against the offensive rushing attack of their opponents has been a problem all season long. We've been trying to warn people. Naj has been trying to warn people every week too. This defense is good, but they are flawed as well. There were some gaping holes in that defense today, not just in the middle of the field, but on the line of scrimmage. Nas is absolutely onto something. The Detroit Lions were a buzzsaw. They are a playoff team. What kind of success are the Broncos going to have if they do get into the playoffs against these teams that seem to be outclassing them and have a little bit more talent at different positions?
Well, that's just it. I mean, we got our hopes up, really, because, well, at least I did, and I think other people did as well. They were on the edge of maybe pushing for a division title. Everybody had some real big hope for it, and this was the measuring stick. Go to Detroit. If you can come out with a win, then we know you're for real. We know you could win the division possibly, and even make some noise in the playoffs. And that kind of got crushed tonight. And it kind of stings, right? It stings when you get your hopes up and then you come crashing back down. But we still have hope to get in the playoffs. And you know what? That's a huge improvement. And I know that there's a faction of folks that wish that they would have tanked the season, got a different quarterback with a really high draft choice. But I'm glad to see an improvement. And if they do make the playoffs, that's a huge improvement from what we've seen over the last 6 years. So there is still light at the end of the tunnel, but it does sting to know that this team just isn't going to be able to go out and really compete with some of these other teams that are more talented and have what it takes mentally to get over the top.
I can't believe I'm going to be optimistic and maybe you're going to be a little bit more critical. We're going to switch roles here for just a second, but go Patriots, huh? Go Pats. Tomorrow is the Chiefs and the Patriots play. I think that's in Foxborough. I mean, crazy things happen. I know New England is the butt of everyone's jokes right now, but when you turn that team on film and you start looking at them, that defense still pretty decent over there for Bill Belichick. What they have going on offensively is a mess, but Broncos country right now, go Patriots. As the Chiefs play the Patriots tomorrow, need a loss from those dang Chiefs. Phil McLaughlin coming in, never giving us losses, always wins, saying good evening, Luke, Thomas, and Deacon Scott. There were no challenges, no offsides, no pass interferences. Let's just move on and win out. Yeah. Phil, I was super frustrated like you were. Some of these lack of calls, Tom, they always happen, right? And we just got done making fun of Pat Mahomes for having a little hissy fit about it. Kareem Jackson, I don't know if you saw, took to social media during the game, and there was a nasty helmet-to-helmet hit that was not called on tight end Adam Troutman earlier in the first half of the game. You tweeted about it at Thomas Hall NFL. Man, some of those calls were frustrating to say the least, but the Broncos did not lose the game because of any of those lack of calls. Phil knows that, but it just added insult to injury when it didn't feel like the Broncos could ever get something going their way. That's when they need a veteran coach to step in. That's when they need a Super Bowl winning coach to use some challenges, Tom. What the heck?
Well, I'll tell you right up front. I mean, if player safety is the utmost importance, why is player safety only for certain teams? The Broncos don't get the benefit of the doubt on things like that very often, and we've seen it happen over and over again. Those are bad. There was 2 helmet-to-helmet hits that or going after somebody's head, defenseless receiver's head. That happened twice. No call. Those are type of thing. I'm old school. I used to watch it back when you could just destroy the receiver. But the rules are the rules. They're trying to protect these people, and for some reason, Broncos don't seem to get those calls as often as other teams do. And I think that's frustrating to Broncos country, because if you're emphasizing player safety, then you need to call those plays consistently. And they weren't doing it. There were other problems, but I mean, again, they got beat because they just got beat. It had nothing to do with the refs, but it's still, that is something that needs to be brought up and talked about, because they're not emphasizing player safety consistently across the board for every team.
You know what else wasn't emphasized? Getting to the quarterback. And that's exactly what Anthony Pennington saw with a generous $2 super. Thanks, Anthony. Hey, guys, apparently Nick Bonito is the heart of this defense. I'll be honest. I think even if Nick Bonito was out there, they probably would have been similar results. Cuero Vidal coming right back in. Why was Payton yelling at Russ? That's what we're trying to figure out right now, Cuero. I mean, I think there was frustration that maybe the play was a little too quick. Russ getting that snap. I don't know if Sean thought that if we delay it just a little, I can yell at the ref. We could try to get an official review. Broncos tried 3 different times to get in the end zone. Didn't. Quinn Miners gets called for offsides penalty. What'd you make of that whole little exchange in the red zone at the 1-2 yard line? It's all anyone's going to be talking about tomorrow. It's all we are talking about right now.
You do not just assume you're going to score on the next play if you've got 1 inch to go, because it doesn't always happen. If you think you've scored, you need to make them review that. Make the refs say, no, you didn't. I just don't understand that. 2 times they should have thrown that flag, that challenge flag, twice, because that ball crossed the plane both times. You need to make the refs. You didn't need to save your timeouts at that point. You were already way down. You needed the score. It wasn't that you needed to save a timeout. You needed those points badly. Sean Payton should have thrown that flag regardless of whether or not someone from upstairs told him to throw it. That was the point. At that point, you had to throw it regardless, and he didn't do it. And he waited thinking, oh, we'll just punch it in. Well, it doesn't always happen that way.
And Sean's my guy, Tom. You know that. I love Sean. I wanted him here. He was my only candidate, my number 1 guy. But for crying out loud, you're a Super Bowl winning quarterback. You've been doing this longer than I've been alive, Sean Payton. And I mean, I don't know if this is just a breakdown in communication, like you mentioned, or what it was, but we expect more out of this veteran head coach and this veteran quarterback, each who have found a lot of success, championship success in this NFL. Alexander Miles coming in with a generous $10 super. No Nick Bonito means that there's no pass rush. Our defense turned around once we got Justin Simmons and Baron Browning back. It was huge. We need depth. The Broncos are good, but they're just thin. Props to Russ, pocket break dancer, a la Mike McGlinchey. Let's talk about this Broncos offensive line, because Alexander Miles is exactly right. McGlinchey, false start today. Rough day against Aiden Hutchinson. Some scares with the injury bug, was able to pop back up both times, return to the game another time. Mike McGlinchey has been a very, very tough player to evaluate. The highest paid offensive tackle, that right tackle position that just has given the Broncos fits for years with these prized free agents. Is Mike McGlinchey the guy, Tom? I mean, just answer me that. Is he the long-term solution at right tackle? Because if so, I'm disappointed.
I am too. No, I don't think so. He's too inconsistent for me. He played well for a little while in the middle there, but he just super inconsistent. He needs help with good pass rushers, and he just, false start. I mean, that's a mental thing. So I don't think he's the long-term answer for a little while, because they paid him so much. But they're gonna need to address both tackles at some point soon. And I do want to just address one thing about the depth. And I don't want to toot my own horn here, but I interviewed DeMarcus Ware the other day, and I asked him specifically about going deep in the playoffs, and he says, I just don't think they have the depth to do it. And go look at it. That's what he said. He said it really nicely, but you hit the nail on the head, Alexander. There's just not enough depth on this team to compete if not all of their stars are out there and playing well. It's just, they just don't have it. And you really hit it, Alexander. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, Nick Bonito, man, we missed him. We missed that pass rush. I don't mean to, make that seem like he was missed. He was absolutely missed. And yeah, Jonathan Cooper, I see you still fighting, but it just wasn't good enough.
Right.
Magus Odon coming in. Thank you so much, Magus, for joining our gut reaction here on MHH and an MHI takeover, if you will. Really, really appreciate you. Never expected us to make the playoffs. Just better than last year. And that's that refreshing response that we had mentioned earlier that while you and I are embarrassed, we're upset, we're frustrated at looking at the Lions game, this disastrous Lions game, 42-17. Who saw that coming? Look, there have been improvements. It's not all dread. We're not looking at firing a head coach. I don't think we're going to just ship this quarterback out right away. You're trying to build a foundation. That's exactly what Magus says he's seeing. Even though things are bad right now on Saturday night primetime action, there's a lot to be positive about. There's a lot to be encouraged about. The Broncos are still alive right now, Tom. They're alive. They're in the AFC playoff card race.
And that's what I said. I've been saying all along. This is the game that you lose. You don't want to be embarrassed, obviously, which they were. But if you are going to lose a game, this is the one to do it. Now, you're razor thin. Don't get me wrong. You've got to win the next 3. But they are teams with losing records. And yes, I know any given Sunday, but the chances are still there. It still looks good. Now, if they've got 2 home games, 1 road game. If they go win their 2 home games, it comes down to that final match. And I still think 10-7 gets you in. I think you don't need help. I think you get in with 10-7 because there's other teams have holes as well. I mean, Houston could drop it another game because CJ Stroud is out. So
Case Keenum. Enter Case Keenum. Yeah. Texans, right? Familiar name, right? Broncos country.
Yeah. So Magnus, thank you for this. Appreciate the positivity. I still think they can make the playoffs. I've said that before. I didn't think they could run the entire table after that Bills game, but I thought they'd get close, and they've got to win 3 more games, and I think they're in the playoffs. I just don't think they're going to go deep.
It's hard to find out and know what to make of this Broncos team. I mean, we're all on the edge of our seats, and feast or famine is kind of the theme here. Jordan Tatum weighing in. Thank you so much for joining MHI on our gut reaction to the Broncos' loss to the Detroit Lions on Saturday Night Football. Jordan saying, take care of the next 2 games, then handle business in Las Vegas. Not overlooking the Patriots or the Chargers, but Vegas is the perfect trap game. I also likelihood of significant improvement at linebacker in the offseason. Yeah, Jordan, linebacker is something that I have been harping at this team to get in the draft with a premium draft selection, 1 through 3. Go to the Senior Bowl, the Shrine Bowl. I've been scouting all these linebackers. Saw one against Detroit tonight for just a little bit, and Jack Campbell. Would have loved to have him here. Josie Jewell, Alex Singleton, they're nice players, right? They're good players. We love them here in Broncos country, but they're lacking in terms of talent. They're lacking in terms of speed. I get it. You can make up for all those things with angles. You could be the hardest worker. Sometimes you just need to have that athletic talent. And they were attacked tonight, Tom, in a way that we haven't seen the Broncos linebackers get attacked really since the first few weeks of the season. I mean, they straight up went at Josie Jewell and Alex Singleton with a rookie tight end. And we saw so much success for the Detroit Lions. And it all came at the expense of Vance Joseph's fantastic defense.
Well, and I think they through their winning streak, that lack of speed and talent there at the linebacker was hidden by scheme a little bit. I don't know what happened. It seemed like they just went away from that completely and just thought, oh, maybe they were a victim of their own success, where they're like, oh yeah, we can handle this tight end by ourselves or whatever it may be. But, the scheme didn't help them out very much. And from my perspective, just watching, I have to go back and watch the game, but just initial reaction, the scheme wasn't very good. But you are absolutely correct. The Broncos need to get faster on defense, and it starts at linebacker. They have to. They are too slow to the ball all the time. And then that's when they lunge, that's when they have to flail, and that's why they're missed tackles. It happens far too frequently.
Well, and George Payton has never really liked the linebacking position in the draft. When you look back at it, it's been one of my biggest negatives about George Payton. We've only seen a little bit of what Sean thinks in the draft, and Drew Sanders, we're still trying to figure him out as a rookie linebacker in this scheme. Is he going to be the X factor for the Broncos? Not sure. Time will tell. But speaking of factors, guys, this holiday season, you might be looking for nutritious, convenient meals that'll keep you energized on jam-packed days. Enter Factor. It's a blessing sent from the football gods straight to Broncos country. Factor is America's #1 ready-to-eat meal delivery service, and it can help you fuel up fast for breakfast, lunch, and dinner with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved, ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. With Factor, you'll save time, eat well, stay on track with your healthy lifestyle while tackling all of your holiday to-dos.
Skip the stress of meal prepping over the holidays with Factor. Choose from more than 35 weekly flavor-packed, fresh, never-frozen meals that support a healthy lifestyle and meet your meal preferences, all delivered right to your door and ready to eat in 2 minutes. This December, get Factor and enjoy eating well without the hassle. Simply choose your meals and enjoy fresh, flavor-packed meals delivered to your door. Ready in just 2 minutes, no prep, no mess. And this isn't a service for just the holiday season. Factor is a way of life 365 days a year.
That's right, guys. Head on over to factormeals.com/huddle50 and use our code. That's huddle50 to get 50% off. Again, that's huddle50 at factormeals.com/huddle50. Get that 50% off. We're looking for X factors, right? For this Denver Broncos team. How do they bounce back? It's ironic, right? As Bill Belichick would say, we're on to New England in this case. I mean, I think it's going to be a rough plane ride home for these Denver Broncos. I think a lot of guys are upset. Sean Payton's upset. We saw just a teaser of that with him and Russell Wilson's exchange over on the sideline. Phil McLaughlin weighing in. Just watch the Payton presser, and Sean would not commit on the Russ confrontation. Also, it was the shortest presser I have ever seen him do. Phil, when I first got into Denver media and everything, I was told real early, watch what they do, not what they say. And if there was a short presser, we already know Sean's pretty upset. He's hot. He's not going to reveal that exchange right now. We might get it next summer, Tom, when we're out there at training camp or a little bit later down the road. But all we can do is speculate right now. There's so much frustration over there. And I think at times when I was watching Sean just absolutely dog cuss Russell Wilson, and I'm not speculating about that. I can read lips. I think we all can here in Broncos country. I got to say, it's not the best form of communication. Sean Payton's my guy, but dog cussing your starting quarterback in front of your team like that with the quarterback coach right there. I mean, as just another grown man, as a human being, I know how I would respond to that, and it wouldn't be well. So I guess you got to give Russ a little bit of credit for being professional, right? He's this master of positivity. Is Sean Payton looking for a shred of emotion from Russell Wilson? I mean, Tom, you want to give him credit for not quitting. I want to see a little bit of emotion. It's nice to see the clap and the smile every once in a while. Yay, fingers up. We're all happy. It'd be nice to see Russ get frustrated and, I don't know, act human in some of these losses.
That's just not him. He just doesn't do it. I mean, we will be expecting that for the rest of his career, and it'll never happen. The problem is they were frustrated. Sean Payton was frustrated that he was getting beat by somebody that he kind of, mentored as a coach and was part of, brought him up, and they just got manhandled. And it was embarrassing. He was frustrated. Of course, he's going to yell and be upset, but that happens. However, yeah, I think you're right. I mean, you can be upset, but there's other ways to do it other than just like start yelling at your quarterback. I don't know. I mean, everybody has their own personal style, but I will tell you this: there are a few people that are on that team that need to get a good yelling at because they played terrible. They played so bad, and it wasn't just that they weren't talented; it's they didn't put the effort into it. In my mind, there was a lack of effort out there, and that's the problem. That's what embarrasses me the most. If I were a head coach, is someone not putting in the effort. Talent is one thing. If you're just beat by better talent, fine. And they were, but they also had a lack of effort in many of those situations out there. And it was pretty pathetic.
Well, and as we're reacting, right, we do have to remember, and Scott's exactly right. The whole confrontation with Sean yelling at Russ came right after Sean got done yelling at the refs too. So maybe Sean was just getting ready to yell at everybody. And sometimes that happens, right? I mean, look, I'm not saying it's the right thing, but it's not unheard of in the NFL either. This grown folk business, buckle up, Buttercup. Phil McLaughlin coming in. Guys, we need linebackers, but I want some beef on the defensive line. I'm so tired of getting run over by the O-line. And Phil, you're exactly right. I mean, it's tough when you see Zach Allen underperforming. I like Jonathan Cooper, right? Baron Browning, saw them both with Quinn Miners down at the Senior Bowl years ago, but they're so thin. they're so easy to move around when you've got a guy like Penei Sewell, just lock on with his big mitts and take these very thin athletic pass rushers for a ride. Tom, you just got done talking to DeMarcus Ware. I'm looking for another DeMarcus Ware, a big,
Yeah.
strong, nasty, physical specimen. Now, DeMarcus Ware still looks like a Greek chiseled god, right? But he had some thickness. He had some weight to him. I need that from a Jonathan Cooper, from a Nick Benito, from a Baron Browning, just like I need more of Naj's support here on this gut reaction. Thank you so much, bro. I get Broncos country is angry. Yeah, for sure. Losses sting, but with 3 weeks left, we are still in this. That has not been the case in 7 years. Those guys out physicaled us, and it happens. We get in the playoffs, anything can happen. Naj, you're exactly right, man. There are 3 weeks left, and there are some big games that Naj is looking at right now, Tom. We're talking about the Patriots, the Chargers, and the Raiders. And it was brought up a little bit earlier about those Raiders. We can't overlook New England right now, right? But not winning in Las Vegas, that's been tough for the Broncos. They never won in SoFi. They did that last week. But to shake this loss off is going to be a true testament to this team's character. I like where Naj's head is at here, because he's being realistic. He's saying, yeah, this sucked, but we can't stop now. We are alive. The Broncos are alive. As mad and disappointed as we are with them. It's kind of like being a parent, right? You get mad and disappointed with your kids if they fail a test, if they're a little dishonest, if they're being naughty, they're on Santa's naughty list, something like that. But we still love them, right? We still got to support them. We still have to nurture them through life. That's a lot about how we're feeling about this loss, Tom.
Yeah. Well, you're right, Naj. I mean, there's still plenty of football left to play. There's 3 games left. Plus, we still have to see what happens this Sunday, right? There's some teams that are playing. You never know. You never know what's going to happen. I mean, it's crazy to think that the Broncos were going to win every game once they started this streak. So they lost the one that they should have lost. The thing that bothers me about it, though, it's not the loss. It's what Naj said. They got just out they just physically were moved. They just had no physicality on the defense. I keep saying it. Mike Purcell played good the last couple games, but for his size, why is he getting moved so easy? I just don't understand. DJ Jones, they all get. I mean, I can understand Zach Allen's a smaller guy. Mike Purcell's 330 pounds. Like, what was happening with him? Why is he getting moved so easily? And that's the problem. That's the problem that I see with it, is that they were making their bread and butter on being physical on defense, and there was none of that. They just got whipped. And that's the problem. That's the problem I have with this loss, other than it was an embarrassment because it was so many points.
Yeah, defense was atrocious today. Let's act like on Payton. I mean, he's the offensive play caller. And when you look at it, Jerry Jeudy was the highest targeted wide receiver with 7 targets. He got 3 catches for 74 yards. That's it. Lil Jordan Humphrey, the one wide receiver with a touchdown. I mean, just total lack of production. I don't know what the game plan was for the offense this week. I don't know what the game plan was for the defense this week. It damn sure wasn't getting to the quarterback, something that they have done, and I get it. We miss Nick Benito. But, man, you keep going back to it, Tom. They felt unprepared. Patriot Tex coming in with a very generous $10 super, reacting with us on the gut reaction. George Payton has got to go. He takes risks on guys who can't stay healthy. He saddled us with a quarterback whose best days are behind him. Sean Payton can't win with average talent in key positions.
Yeah, they do have average talent in key positions, right?
I'll talk to me. Talk to me. Where are we average?
Edge rusher, average. I mean, they can at times catch fire and be okay, but they're getting no pressure unless they're blitzing, and they didn't even get pressure very often with that. So you got edge rusher. I would say you've got a key cornerback, but the opposite side of him, lackluster. Fabian Moreau was, surprisingly good for a while, but he's really starting to fall down. And then you've got tackle problems. I mean, I like Garrett Bowles. He's getting older. McGlinchey's not somebody that I would trust long term. And then like you said, the game plan. Jerry Jeudy. Why are they force feeding Jerry Jeudy when he obviously is not what this offense is needing? I like some of the calls. There was some of the, throwing it up to Sutton a couple times. Fine. I mean, maybe he didn't come down with it, but that's what you got to do. But force feeding it to Jerry Jeudy just seems to me like they're going away for the game plan that worked, because everybody's complaining that Jerry Judy's open and not getting the ball. But there's a reason for it. I keep saying there's a reason for it. It's not because Russ Turner, can't see anymore. He doesn't trust him, and making him go to him all the time seems like it's taking away what they should be doing, which is focusing on the other players who do make a difference.
What's ironic about what you just said, and I completely agree, it was one of my keys to victory. Stop spoon feeding Jerry Jeudy. Stop trying to force him the ball. Just give it to Sutton on a Saturday night special. Right. What's ironic about Russell Wilson not trusting Jerry Jeudy? Sean Payton doesn't trust Russell Wilson. Okay. Yeah, so there is tons of mistrust all over this football team, not just on the offense, but on the defense too. The secondary right now for the Denver Broncos probably didn't trust today that their D-line and their pass rushers would get to the quarterback. The D-line couldn't trust that the linebackers could make a tackle. I mean, there were so much just lazy, sloppy play. It's very, very frustrating. Phil McLaughlin, one thing made me happy. Jerry Jeudy actually looked good. Good enough. I mean, yeah, he looked okay, I guess. When Jerry Jeudy finishes the day, it's 3 receptions for 74 yards. He did have that long of 40, and it made us wonder for just a shred of a second, Tom, at the beginning of the game, first couple plays, right? Is Jerry Jeudy going to be the X factor? Is he going to be the dynamic guy for this game? Is it the breakout game for Jerry Jeudy in 2023? It's always next year with Jerry Jeudy. No, next year's the year. He doesn't get the opportunities. Oh, the drops weren't his fault. It's always something. Sean Payton has to know better. You brought Lil Jordan Humphrey in. You worked with him and Adam Troutman both in the New Orleans Saints. And Sean Payton trusts those guys a lot more than Jerry Jeudy. I think if you got Sean Payton alone in a moment of truth, maybe a few cold pops, he regrets not trading him.
Well, the thing of it is Jerry Jeudy can't just be good. He's got to be great out there. He's the player that they drafted to be a great and dynamic wide receiver that opens up the offense, and he doesn't. That's the problem. Yeah, he looked pretty good out there. He had a few nice catches, had a couple nice runs, but that's not what this offense needs. This offense needs a dynamic, game-changing wide receiver. They don't have it. Sutton, I'm not knocking Sutton. Good player, good at catching contested passes. He doesn't open up the offense. He doesn't make it dynamic. And Judy's supposed to be that guy. He's not. He's just not that guy. So being good isn't good enough for what they really need.
He was the second wide receiver selected in his draft class behind his teammate Henry Ruggs, and you wouldn't know it based off of all the other his same classmates, wide receivers, having much more success. You could see CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, the list goes on and on. It's so disappointing, and it's even more frustrating when you see Sean Payton continually trying to force it down this team's throat. I don't know what it is. Maybe he thinks he's the guy, right? There's always that one coach. I can reach this player. No one else can, but I can. I don't know that that's the case. It was dysfunction palooza tonight in Detroit. It was embarrassing to see that the Detroit Lions fans were thrilled to be having such a good time. That was their Christmas come early, and it was completely at the Broncos' expense. Tom, I thought we were done with this. If the Broncos were going to lose, they were going to lose. But I thought we were done with the embarrassment. I thought that we were beyond that. I thought that the 5-game winning streak would make that go away. Not to say that this team wouldn't lose, but tonight was an absolute embarrassment. So I can understand why Sean Payton was short at the press conference tonight. I can understand why he doesn't want to talk about Russell Wilson. I'm sure the PR team's trying to put something together real quick, and I'm sure as soon as we get off of this pod, we'll both have an email of the talking notes from PR. But it's tough to know what to make of this team. They're technically still alive, but man, we have a bad taste in our mouths heading into Sunday.
Like I said, when they're bad, they're really bad. It's awful. When they play good, they hang in there. When they're playing they're a good team, they can hang in there, and they're playing a team that's not as talented and they play good, they can beat them pretty soundly, like they did with the Chargers, they did with the Browns. But when they play bad, they're awful. And there's no beating around the bush. I mean, these are 2 embarrassing losses on the year that were absolute embarrassments. This was an embarrassment tonight. There's no sugarcoating it. They got whipped where you don't want to get whipped, which is right up front. They got beat on the offensive line, on the defensive line, handily. And that's the problem. They need to fix those up.
And not to mention on prime time. I
Yeah.
mean, like, not only did you get beat all over the field, but you got beat as the last of 3 games on Saturday night. I mean, bumping around the Mile High City today, Tom, everybody had their orange on. I was coaching some kids volleyball, going to the grocery store. I mean, Broncos country was ready for this, and they felt excited. They felt very positive and very confident. I'm talking to people. How do you think the game's going to go tonight? Oh, we got this. It's going to be tough, but we can do this. And my prediction, I think yours too. We both had the Broncos winning a very close game by 3 or 4 points. I mean, to see that this product, the final score being 42-17, it felt like it could have even been more. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about Staley losing his job with the Chargers. And oh, man, thank God we're so far removed from that. Are we? Are we that far removed? Sure, you've got ownership. Sure, you've got a head coach, but we still do not know if Russell Wilson and Sean Payton are compatible. Tom, I know the contract is awful. I can't ignore it. You're exactly right. That would be fiscally irresponsible. It would be reckless. It would just completely deter this team for the next 10 years. You are right. But for crying out loud, we've got to move heaven and earth to find the right signal caller for this team. You can win games with Russell Wilson. I just don't see Sean Payton and Russ having a happy marriage. This thing is heading for divorce. It was an arranged marriage from the get-go. Sure, it was much improved from last season, but enough is enough already.
I just keep going back to the same thing. Like, maybe the talent around Russ isn't as good as we think it is. And if you look at his play with DK Metcalf and a few other people in Seattle, was a lot better. Jerry Jeudy's not very good. I'm sorry. He's an average wide receiver. Cortland Sutton's a decent wide receiver. They don't have a dynamic pass catcher, let alone a freaking tight end that can get open most of the time. So, I mean, I know that the marriage seems rough right now, but there needs to be some stuff added before we can say, okay, this is just not going to work. Get somebody out there who can actually change the game a little bit in the passing game. Like, get someone who can be out there, actually changing the game, and then we'll see what happens. I think he's got another year to make that happen. And if they do find somebody that can play like that, we'll see what happens. We'll see. Maybe he is done. Maybe Russ is done. But I just don't think there's enough talent on that offensive side of the ball to really make a good, sound judgment of just how this offense could work with those two in it.
I completely agree with you. There's not enough talent. And you know what? There's not enough talent at the quarterback position, Tom. There's not. All right. Like, Russ is, I get it. You can win some games. He's a serviceable quarterback. I don't know what tier he's on anymore. And I don't want journeyman in here anymore either. But when I see Joe Flacco, yes, that's right. Former Broncos quarterback Joe Flacco out there having a little bit more success in a game than Russell Wilson. Come on now. Joe hasn't even been on the team that long. It's just what? And Kevin Stefanski is a better play caller than Sean Payton. I mean, like, these things are just absolutely maddening to this fan base. And I get it. It's sometimes there are these outliers, right? Until defenses eventually figure these quarterbacks out. They come back down to earth. Ask Josh Dobbs. He knows all about it. Third string for Minnesota, right? But it's just so frustrating, Tom, because you see a little bit of success and you wonder what the possibilities could be. And then you see 6 steps backwards, which was the Detroit Lions tonight.
Yeah, it was rough. And, the thing of it is, too, is like, after that fumble, it kind of started to snowball the other way, which I was hoping that they could rebound a little bit from it. And they have in the past, but this time they just couldn't do it. And the talent overwhelmed them. So I think, had that not happened, maybe this could have been a better game all around but it seems like once they get that first kind of kick in the mouth, or they make something, make some mistake, they have a really hard time bouncing back from that. And I think it's because they just don't trust that they have enough talent to do it. They just don't have enough talent on offense to really go out there and sling it and get back in the game and think they're going to score at will whenever they want to. And they don't have it. And they know it. They know it. That's the problem, is the offense knows it.
Well, and I'm not so sure that there's a killer instinct right there with the offense either. I just don't get that sense from any player right now. I mean, Cortland's been great this season for the Denver Broncos. He's having one of his best years. However, I mean, there are more dominant receivers in the league. Cortland's number 1 in the red zone right now, right? Maybe that'll change a little bit tomorrow, but it's tough. There's a lack of talent, but there's a lack of leadership too. And when you see the quarterback, Mr. Positive, it's just the way he is. He's just Mr. Positive. Well, I don't need my quarterback being always positive. Sometimes I need Will Levis getting after DeAndre Hopkins a little bit. Now they're besties. Right now they're hanging out. For a while you wondered, oh man, the rookie quarterback who drinks mayonnaise with his coffee and stuff like that's yelling at DeAndre Hopkins. It happens. This is an emotional game. We're talking about Sean Payton and Russell Wilson yelling at each other. We're speculating what it's about. Maybe it's a big thing, maybe it's not, but it's a big thing when this team gets embarrassed. Anthony weighing back in. Where was the run defense tonight? Big weakness. I've been trying to figure out, Tom, you've been trying to figure out, Scott, too, where it's been all season. I mean, while we've been giving Alex Singleton his flowers, and we've all been trying, all three of us, Scott, you and I on these airwaves, Nick, too. Alex Singleton leads the league in tackles. He also leads them in missed tackles. Okay, there are a lot of fundamental mistakes that this defense makes. To not be able to defend the run will absolutely embarrass you. And that's what we saw tonight against the Detroit Lions, who absolutely ran wild over the Denver Broncos. Let's see, total yards here. Rushing yards for the Detroit Lions, 185 to the Broncos 83. That averages 6.6 yards per carry against Vance Joseph's stellar defense, Tom.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we can blame Russell Wilson all we want, but if you can't stop the run, there's nothing he can do about it. I'm sorry. I mean, to have the offensive line impose their will so easily against a defensive line, that
Graham Glasgow, Tom.
Yeah, I know. It takes all the air out of the defense. Like that needs to and the funny thing is I was like, wow, they're coming out throwing. Goff is slinging it to start out. I'm like, what is going on? This is perfect. This is exactly what the Broncos want. They didn't want them to try and run it down their throat. Obviously, he carved them apart, but good Lord, like you had to put it in Goff's arm to do it. But the defense was just awful. It was awful all night. There was nothing else you could say about it. And they just got pushed around.
Well, and they were exhausted too the entire time. I mean, offense would not give them a break. And if they did, it seems like they'd get down to the red zone just to not hit pay dirt. And some of those decisions, I mean, at the end of the game, right? Kicking that field goal, punting. I mean, I'm like, Sean, are you waving the white flag? What are we doing here? The whole thing, it was odd. And I know the Miami Dolphins game seems like it was so long ago, right? Got some reminders of what that felt like a little bit tonight, and it didn't feel good. Phil McLaughlin weighing back in. When Russ was in Seattle, he had either a great offensive line to get the run game going, or he had top receivers to throw to. Unfortunately, we don't have that talent yet. Well, wait a second, Phil. I got to push back just a little bit. The Broncos offensive line was upgraded, right? That's what we reported on. That's what we speculated on. We thought it'd be so much better. I've not been impressed with Ben Powers. Lloyd Cushenberry has been playing improved. He couldn't get a push to save his life tonight. The Broncos offensive line was continually blown off of the ball, including Quinn Miners, a guy who's an absolute dog, loves to go forward, sloppy technique. Just horrendous technique when you look at it from the interior O-line. And, we chart these plays. We're going to go back or watch a little bit of film tonight even. And I'm just already disgusted because you said it earlier in the show tonight, Tom. It starts in the trenches. That offensive line, while they may be healthy, they've been inconsistent all season long. So Phil's exactly right. There need to either be some upgrades or we need to figure out some different coaching, some different schemes. It's not working as well as it should.
Well, just think about it. Name an elite talent on the Broncos offense. An elite talent. You got to think about it for a long time. You could maybe go with Miners. He's getting there. He's played really well. There's not an elite talent on the Broncos offense. That shows up when they're going up against a team that's playing well and they're not on their game. It shows up. There's not an elite player.
Do you agree with me that Russell Wilson is not an elite talent?
No, he's not an elite player. He can play the game still. I don't think he's washed. I don't think he's washed.
I don't either.
He can still play the game, but there's nobody elite on that team on the offensive side of the ball. There's not an elite player. You can't go in and play a team on the road who's more talented and faster and just an all-around better team without an elite player on your offense. It doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen. Just like these embarrassing losses weren't supposed to happen, Broncos country. We thought this was done with the Miami game, right? Some frustrating losses. The Houston game, okay, that's frustrating, but they were close. 42-17, that's not close. That's a lot of players quitting. That's players not mentally checked in. That's players reading their own press clippings, maybe coaches reading their own press clippings as well, right? And I'm talking to you, Sean Payton, my guy. This is really tough. And when you start to look at it from top to bottom, you wonder where the Broncos go from here. They're 7-7. They're still technically in the race, but now they need some help, right? And it starts tomorrow with the Chiefs losing in New England. That is the goal. Thank you guys for joining us. He is Thomas Hall. I am Luke Patterson. We are reacting to the gut reaction here on MHH, an MHI takeover, if you will. We'd really appreciate it if you guys followed us on Twitter. Tom is at Thomas Hall NFL. Yours truly at Luke Patterson LP. You can catch us together on Wednesday nights at 6 p.m. Mountain. And Tom just got done interviewing DeMarcus Ware. DeMarcus Ware told you, Tom, this team, he's concerned. He said it nicely, but he's concerned about the lack of depth with this team. And George Payton is not immune from criticism either. Tom, the Broncos are not only thin at talent with their starters, they're thin at talent with their bench. You've got the bench guys playing particularly well right now with the Jaquan McMillan. PJ Locke didn't have a very good game. Neither of those guys had a very good game, right? But they were bench role players that have been thrusted into the starting limelight, if you will. Behind them, who? JL Skinner, we're going to see you play. Riley Moss, you're making a couple nice special team plays. But, I mean, the Broncos aren't even shepherding this next generation behind the starters. They're so far behind, Tom, with their talent, as you mentioned earlier, that they're not even developing new talent. They don't have a farm league, okay? This isn't baseball. You're supposed to be developing that stuff on the practice squad. The Broncos haven't done it for years now.
Yeah. Well, and just look at they were expecting Damari Mathis to take the leap and be the starter next to PS2. But unfortunately, he wasn't very good. So they had to go with Fabian Moreau, who I'm telling you played really well, surprisingly so. But he is not one of those guys that is really very good player and is starting to show. The cracks are starting to show. You see him, he's getting as the season's going on, he's getting a little bit worse every game. And you hit the nail on the head. Like, that was a depth player. That actually was supposed to be camp fodder. That, from my perspective, I thought it was camp fodder. Here he is, a starter. That's the problem. They don't have enough talent on both sides of the ball. They just don't have enough to keep up with the Detroit Lions, the Miami Dolphins, those type of, without everything going right.
This was a measuring stick game, Tom, for the Broncos, either making it in the playoffs or to see how they would fare with one of the league's upper echelon teams. I know. They beat the Chiefs once. They beat the Bills this season, right? The Browns were a winning team, still technically are. But this Lions team, I think, was the toughest team that the Broncos have faced. And I know the Dolphins game was a whole nother butt whooping, but this Lions team was just bullying. It was bully ball. And you're exactly right. The chat's saying it, and they're right too. Look, these losses, they happen, but how's this team going to bounce back? They started 1-5, Tom, as you know, and they came rallying back in a way that we didn't even consider. Now they're looking at a New England game on the road, right? Or is this one at home?
It's at home. The two next two are at home. Last one's on the road. So you got New England and Denver. Look, I'm everybody's upset. They got embarrassed by Detroit. New England doesn't have a lot of talent either. Neither does the Chargers, and neither does Las Vegas. I mean, these are winnable games. Yeah, I know they got embarrassed. I know but they've shown resiliency. They've shown the ability to bounce back. They bounced back from Houston. They bounced back from 1-5 record. I'm not ready to write them off as a terrible, they're just going to lose the last 3 games and, have a losing record. I think these are winnable games, but the problem is they have to come to play. They didn't come to play in Detroit. You could tell. They need to come to play and take care of business. They can still do this. They can still make it. These 3 teams are not great teams. They're not great teams that they're facing. It's just people can worry about it. Yeah, any given Sunday, but there is an opportunity for the Broncos to bounce back and get into the playoffs, and that's a good step forward. They're not Super Bowl contenders, but that's what you need to see is a good step forward, and that's changing the culture, bringing in more talent, fixing the areas that need to be fixed. And if they can win while doing it, it's good for the fans and good for us.
Good for the fans and good for us. Just like this gut reaction has been good for us, Tom. We needed to get our frustrations out. It was awesome to be able to do that with Broncos country. Guys, you could catch Tom, Scott, and I every Wednesday night for MHI, 6 p.m. Mountain on these very airwaves. We've got our guys working hard over at milehighhuddle.com to bring you some key takeaways, some studs and duds, all kinds of different information and analysis from Lions. Where do we go from here? Stay tuned to milehighhuddle.com. Guys, give us a follow on X. Tom is at Thomas Hall NFL, Scott at Scout Kennedy, and yours truly at Luke Patterson LP. We would also appreciate you guys following the mothership over at Mile High Huddle as well. And Tom, here we go, man. It's on in New England. This team has been gritty. This team has believed in just themselves. I can't wait to see how they come out against the Patriots. That's going to tell us all we need to know. Are they fighters, or are they willing to lay down and quit? Cabo on 3, or are we going to try to make a run? This team is very much alive. I needed this, man. Thank you so much for a great show.
Yep, thank you. And again, you can be disappointed. We all are, but there's still 3 games left that are winnable games. So let's just hope that the Broncos can actually take care of business and get in the playoffs. It'll be fun.
That's what Phil's saying. It was a terrible game, but when was the last time that Broncos country talked playoffs? It's exactly right, Phil. And we're talking playoffs, and we are going to continue to take you through it here at Mile High Huddle. For Tom, for Scott, Luke, Sam Broncos country. Here we go. This is the way.
This is the way.